Good afternoon and welcome to Senator Machaela Cavanaugh, legislative candidate from District 6. Thank you, Senator Cavanaugh, for joining us for our virtual legislative candidate meetings. My name is Gina Ragland, and joining me today are AARP lead advocacy volunteers Susan DeCamp and Danny DeLong. We also have the privilege to have with us today our state president, David Holmquist. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be shared with AARP members across your district prior to the election. Senator Cavanaugh, we appreciate your taking the next 30 minutes of your time to meet and discuss issues of importance to the 50-plus voter and their families in your district and across Nebraska. As a little bit of background, AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering and strengthening people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. As people live longer, healthier lives, we know we need to think differently about what it means to age. So with that, Senator Cavanaugh, if you want to start us off by giving us a little background about yourself and your campaign, 5 minutes or less would be great. And then once we've completed your opening, we'll move into the questions. So I'll give it back to you, Senator. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for all of your advocacy. So I've been representing District 6 in the legislature for the last 4 years. And in that time, I have really appreciated the work and advocacy of AARP. My campaign is focused on things that matter most to people, which is healthcare, access to high quality healthcare and childcare. And when I ran 4 years ago, one of my priorities was to see paid family medical leave enacted in Nebraska, and that continues to be a priority for me. And so I hope that in the next 4 years, if I'm reelected, that's something that I will be able to move forward and hopefully get enacted in Nebraska's legislature. I am a mom to 3 kids, so I have to oftentimes balance, like everyone else, that family caregiver responsibility. I am fortunate that I am not currently having to be a caregiver to my parents, but I do recognize the significance of that role for individuals that have aging parents, as I do, but don't tell them I said that. They're not aging, they're very young. My mom is out knocking doors with me every day, so she would really push back on that. Yeah, I think that's kind of just me in a nutshell, I guess.
Thank you, Senator. And we always say age is just a number. So
that's right.
Keep that in perspective. So thank you for your introduction and, of course, your bio. And again, all your leadership in the legislature, especially on the paid leave. We do appreciate that. We have provided you with a set of 3 issues containing 4 questions pertaining to the 50-plus in Nebraska. Again, because of our time commitments today, we'll allot for about 5 minutes for each of those questions. So our first question is on health, caregiving, and home and community-based services. And Susan DeCamp is going to take that. Susan, go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Gina. Good afternoon, Senator Cavanaugh. It's nice to have you with us today.
Thank you.
So, as you well know, home and community-based services, also known as HCBS, provides an array of services to help people with daily activities that promotes independence and allows them to age in place in their own homes and communities and delay that institutional care, which is much more expensive. And as you also know, family caregivers provide care for someone who's unable to live independently. And these caregivers are family members, friends, or acquaintances who often provide that care without any pay. And we have found that telehealth services can be significant for seniors, particularly in the rural areas and underserved communities. And they can also provide support to family caregivers by reducing travel time, wait times, and costs associated with caregiving. So we have a couple of questions for you in that area. The first question, what will you do to support the 240,000 unpaid family caregivers in Nebraska through policies such as enhanced respite services, access to telehealth, caregiver education and training, and help with out-of-pocket costs? And then the second question is, what will you do to protect and or expand the home and community-based services program, particularly in the area of recruitment and retention of a sufficient workforce and adequate funding of the services that Nebraskans and their families rely on?
Thank you, Susan, for those questions. First, I would say when it comes to telehealth, so I do sit on the Health and Human Services Committee, but I also sit on the Telecommunications Transportation Committee. And I lobbied to be put on both of those committees. I wanted to be on the Telecommunications Committee because I'm very interested in investing in our infrastructure for telehealth and teleeducation. And I think that that's an essential infrastructure issue that Nebraska faces, especially in our rural areas. I'm also very aware of the healthcare deserts in our rural areas. My aunt and uncle are doctors out in Hooker County, and their nursing home is one of the latest nursing homes to have shut down because of staffing issues. And so now they are aging. My aunt and uncle are almost in their 70s now, and they're the only healthcare provider there. And so I am concerned about populations in rural Nebraska. I'm concerned about what will happen to the population in Hooker when my aunt and uncle are no longer able to provide them with healthcare. And they have been acting as they do a lot of residency rotations from the medical center, family practice, come out and stay with them for their rural practice. And I think that's a really important program that we need to continue investing in and encouraging medical students to go out into the rural communities to help provide healthcare. But we also need to be creating incentives to get more people out to the rural areas, especially our nursing homes in those rural areas. So I would support any investment in infrastructure for telehealth, and not just the infrastructure of expanding broadband and access, but also the infrastructure for parity in healthcare reimbursements, which I know is something that has been come up again recently here in Nebraska with Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I think it just highlights the need for creating parity in those reimbursement costs so that our healthcare providers are encouraged to continue those types of services, because if they're not getting the same reimbursement, I mean, it is a business that they need to run, so it's understandable. When it comes to education and training, I would look to the experts on what that looks like and how the state can be a partner in supporting that. If there is specific legislation that needs to be enacted, I would be happy to talk about what that looks like and how we can carry that forward. I think it is important for caregivers to have all the resources possible at their disposal. And yeah, I guess, what are some of the examples of out-of-pocket costs? I'm sure that there are lots of out-of-pocket costs, but if we're able to reimburse for those like we would if they were in a facility, that's again, parity. We should be looking at parity in these instances. If the state is saving money by having a family caregiver, then the state should also be considering that sort of parity in how we're reimbursing costs. To your next question about the home and community-based services program, recruitment and retention of employees, the workforce pay. I mean, it really is, it's all about what are we paying our workforce, and it's definitely not enough. And I know this last year with the budget, we did put money towards increased pay for a lot of our services in the state, reimbursement rates. It's not enough. It's not even close to enough. And we see that by the fact that we are struggling to get people into these jobs. But additionally, we need people in the state. And so it's not just the pay, but it's recruiting people to come to our state. And so I think that that's a very layered problem that we need to address in housing costs and childcare costs and access to housing, access to childcare. We can't have a workforce that doesn't have a place to live and take care of their own children. And so it's a very complicated issue, and it's one that I'm certainly very keen on addressing in the legislature.
Great, thanks for your answers, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. And our second question is, we've kind of dabbled a little bit in this already, but we'll go a little bit further into depth on nursing facility quality. And Dave Holmquist is going to take that. Go ahead, Dave.
Good afternoon, Senator, and please extend my hello to your dad.
I will.
He and I work together a lot in my previous life.
Don't tell him I said he was aging if you see him.
I won't say a word to him. I'm aging. Anyway, over 20,000 Nebraskans require care in nursing facilities or in assisted living communities. Facilities have closed their doors, citing reimbursement challenges and staffing shortages. Nebraska will need an additional 4,700 more nursing assistants, LPNs, and RNs by 2028 just to meet Nebraska's care needs. Everyone, regardless of where they reside, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect and have access to quality medical care. Better staff to resident ratios improve the overall quality of care and well-being for residents. Workforce recruitment, retention, and job satisfaction challenges are prevalent across the long-term services and support industry. Causes of workforce challenges must be identified and implemented to respond to the growing need of high-quality care. The question is, what will you do to improve the quality of nursing facility care for Nebraska residents, including addressing the growing long-term care workforce crisis in the state, professional education and training, and accountable facility reimbursement?
Well, thank you for that question. I think that, again, we need to be investing in higher pay for the workforce and higher reimbursement rates for the facilities as well. I mean, we know that none of it is at the level that it should be, which we see when the when the rate for people who are private pay is so much higher. That's a clear indicator that we're not at the market value for reimbursement, and we should be. So I will continue to advocate for higher reimbursement rates for both just services provided and for pay. I also think that we need to be doing more investment in the education area and the recruitment of professionals out of, nursing staff, nursing school, scholarships, or student loan forgiveness programs. I think we also should be doing more to encourage people to go through programs within our community colleges. I would have really liked to have seen us make community college in Nebraska free, at least for 2 years, using the AARP dollars as a way to incentivize people to stay in the state and to move to the state, because you can get those nursing degrees through the community colleges and start working right away. And that would have been, I think, a great asset to the state. So that's something that I will definitely be continuing to advocate for, because I think that that is a low-hanging fruit, as it were, on how we can be addressing some of these really important issues.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Our final question for discussion today centers on livable communities and helping people stay in their home. And Danny Dillon is going to take that. So go ahead, Danny.
Good afternoon, Senator. Good to see you again.
Yeah.
AARP does polling, of course they do. And typically more than 75% of the persons over 50 say that their main priority is to age in place. What they mean is they want to live in their own home as long as they can, live in their home community as long as they can. And so AARP's response to that, policy response to that, is the livable community. Livable communities, from our point of view, are safe and secure. They have safety and security infrastructure sufficient to keep people, to protect people's well-being. Livable communities offer reliable housing, or affordable housing, I should say, excuse me, and transportation options that allow individuals to travel by multiple means. And the fourth feature is livable communities provide supportive community features and services for people, such as access to healthcare, which you've mentioned, and access to high-speed internet. Affordable transit options and reliable healthcare are critical to support older Nebraskans aging in place. So I'm thinking that you're talking about Mullen when you're talking about Kirkandine. I'm from Callaway, and we used to be in the same athletic conference as Mullen. And so, always have a good feeling for Mullen, and saw their nursing home shut down and was bummed out by it. But But those folks up there now don't have a nursing home.
No.
They're going to have to be, the ones that were in there have to be moved. Who knows how far away from family and friends.
Mhm.
Terrible, terrible thing. Finally, high-speed internet, which we've always argued in front of your committee, should be affordable, reliable, and accessible for all Nebraskans. Digital skills development is also, or what we would call digital literacy, is also essential to obtaining the benefits of high-speed internet access in the home. People need to know what kinds of devices to purchase and how to operate those devices so that they can bring the world to them. And so our question comes down to this. What will you do to ensure that all Nebraskans, mainly those 50 plus, have access to livable communities which offer affordable housing, diverse transportation options, adequate health care, and affordable, reliable, and accessible high-speed internet, including digital skills development?
So I would say, with the adequate healthcare, that's probably one of the greatest obstacles, is that we have healthcare deserts all over the state, and not just in rural areas, in urban communities as well. And getting access to adequate healthcare has become more and more challenging over the last couple of years, as we've seen an exodus from our healthcare workforce due to the pressures of dealing with a pandemic. So I think we need to be, all of these things are very holistic view of how everything is interconnected, that we need to have a strong infrastructure in our communities for transportation. We need to have strong infrastructure across the state for high-speed internet. We need to be partnering both with our private companies and our public power to ensure that we're getting that internet infrastructure in place, and our Department of Roads as well, because they all can play a part together in increasing the ability to lay fiber and to connect to fiber in our more rural communities. And that's something that is, I have come to find, one of the most politicized issues in Nebraska is connecting to broadband, because our public power is laying fiber, but they don't want to lease it to private companies. And so figuring out all of those sort of internal politics in those different entities is I've proven to be a very large challenge that the Transportation Telecommunications Committee has been charged with and continues to be charged with. This increase in money resources to our broadband in the state is encouraging. However, there hasn't been a great deal of transparency in how that is working. And so that is something that I'm very concerned about. And next session, I hope that we can dig into and find more transparency on that issue. The governor did just announce another large investment in broadband, but there isn't really clear guidance on how that is being utilized. And, we have this ongoing discussion about underserved and unserved, and overbuilding out underserved areas while not building out unserved areas. And so I think we need to make sure that we're being really strategic about how we're investing those dollars. Sorry, that was a little bit of a broadband tangent. Again, adequate healthcare, we just need to be continuing to be mindful of reimbursement rates, of education, workforce issues, and how we can invest in those areas and make sure that people are staying in those jobs. Those are really should be high paying jobs. I mean, nursing used to be one of the H3 jobs, and now it feels like we're just cutting it off at the knees because of our reimbursement rates. And so I think we need to get back to these high paying, high quality jobs and treating them as such. I don't know if I answer everything.
You did, Senator, you did.
Okay.
Good job. And you're preaching to the choir. So we appreciate it and appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cavanaugh. As we're now coming to the end of our 30 minutes, though it seems like every time we do this, it goes faster and faster. But I would like to offer back to you any closing thoughts or comments you might have for members and constituents of your district as you continue to campaign. So I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you. Well, one issue that we didn't discuss today that I'm particularly concerned about, and I am hearing from people in my district about, is voter ID and how that is going to impact our aging community. I've heard from a few different constituents who have parents who have let their IDs lapse because they don't drive and they don't need one. They're in a facility and that's not something that's necessary to them. And the burden, especially for women who've changed their names, to now get an ID and requiring their original birth certificate and then their marriage certificate for their change of name and all of that documentation that frankly, some of our elderly community members don't have. And so I am very concerned about how this ballot initiative is going to impact our Asian community's ability to vote. And I'm not really sure what to do about that because now it's on the ballot, but that's something that I've been very mindful of and I've been hearing from people in the older communities about. And so if this is to pass, I will be interested in working with AARP to address those obstacles in the future, which may be the reality that we have come January.
Thank you, Senator Cavanaugh. And I would just speak on behalf of AARP and let you know that we would be at the table front and center if the initiative would pass, because the legislature is obviously charged with development of what that ID and all those requirements would look like. And so that's definitely a space that AARP will engage in moving forward. So I appreciate your thoughts and comments and bringing that up.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you again, Senator Cavanaugh, for taking the time to visit with us. We wish you the best with your campaign, and thank you again for meeting with AARP today.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
I appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Senator.
Thanks,
Thank
Senator.
you.
See you in session.